Hello and welcome to the Literary Lair. Today is a very special occasion. This is my 90th book review, which means I have only 10 more reviews to go until I get to the 100th episode of the Literary Lair. And to commemorate the 90th episode, I'm going to review something that I have never reviewed before. A Doctor Who book. A Doctor Who book that isn't an episode novelization and features a Doctor that isn't from the classic era. This book features my first Doctor, the 11th Doctor, and Clara Oswald, who is, as of now, the current companion of the 12th Doctor. But knowing the show, there's no telling how much longer that'll last. Anyway, before we start, I should explain where the show is at this point for the non-Whovians out there. Doctor Who is a show about an alien who travels throughout time and space in his Tardis, which takes the form of a 60s-era police box. The Doctor has different incarnations, and when an actor leaves the show, the Doctor regenerates and changes his appearance to that of the new actor. And that's why the show has been able to survive since it started in 1963. This incarnation of the Doctor is the 11th one, played by Matt Smith, who has an affinity for funny headwear and bow ties, like I do, who started as the Doctor in Series 5. His current companion in the book is Clara Oswald, played by Jenna Coleman, a young woman who showed up all throughout the Doctor's time stream in Series 7, and is called the Impossible Girl by the Doctor. That's about it, so let's get to it. So, the cover is pretty amazing. It has photos of the Doctor and Clara with the Texas Schoolbook Depository in the background and Kennedy's car post-assassination in the foreground, and some weird, shrouded woman off to the side. It's all framed in a circular Gallifreyan design sort of thing, and the title and author are on the bottom. Anyway, on to the story. The story picks up at Totters Lane, where Police Constable Reg Cranfield is investigating a strange happening. No, it's not the Tardis, even though it is November 23rd, 1963. It's his dead father calling to him from the mist. He sees his father's face in the mist, and it chastises him for not being there when he was dying. And when Reg says that had he known his father was going to die, he would have stayed with him, his father yells at him for that too, claiming that he would have only stayed to watch him die. Reg feels immense guilt and sadness over his father's death, and then the face darts at him with teeth bared and begins to scream. We meet up with the Doctor and Clara at the tail end of an adventure to save an archaeological dig from a flood, and the Doctor and Clara get into a spat about how it was Clara's fault that the flood happened, and the Doctor mimics an argument between the two of them with his hands. Clara changes out of her wet clothes, and we learn that she accidentally hit the water release button while looking for a water cooler, and yeah, that was totally her fault, and sort of out of character to me, but whatever. We learn that the entire planet C was made out of bubble bath, which is interesting, and it means that the TARDIS got a nice bath out of the flood experience. The Doctor becomes concerned when Clara starts crying without her knowing why, and the TARDIS starts to malfunction because it's crying as well. The Doctor asks Clara if she called the TARDIS chubby, and the Doctor sees a face in the display on the TARDIS console screen. The face of Astrid Peth. Backstory for Astrid. She was a waitress on the Titanic, which wasn't a seafaring vessel, but a spacefaring one. Long story. And she sacrificed herself to help save the 10th Doctor, so he could stop the ship from crashing into London on Christmas, and then she becomes Stardust to explore the cosmos. Did I mention Doctor Who is a weird show? Anyway, the Doctor shuts off the screen and lands the TARDIS, discovering when they leave that they're in a hospital, in Dallas on November 23rd, 1963, the day that Doctor Who premiered its first episode, and a day after President John F. Kennedy was assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald in Dallas. Everyone at the hospital is either sad or extremely angry, and the Doctor can't figure out why, but soon figures out the name of the hospital. The hospital is Parkland Memorial Hospital, where JFK was pronounced dead, and so the people are pretty understandably touchy. We then switch to May Callan, a reporter for the Dallas Morning News, who gets her story about Johnson being sworn in and Air Force One taken away from her to give to the guy who does the sports pages. But that's okay, because her editor has something better for her. Pictures from the assassination that he entrusts only to her because he knows that she won't abuse the opportunity. She spills her coffee on her desk and, shock of all shocks, sees a dead relative, her Grandma Betty, who died in the hospital when May couldn't make a plane trip out to see her. The coffee stain starts to shadow her like Cranfield's father did, and complains that May didn't care and just wanted her grandmother's money, which May knows isn't true. The face begins to scream and May jumps back, knocking the rest of her coffee onto her hand, leaving a burn mark, and May grabs her typewriter and starts to hit the stain until it goes away. Then we go to Warren Skeet. Not that one. Warren Skeet is an FBI agent tasked with checking out the book depository where Oswald aimed at Kennedy from. Skeet sees raindrops on a window pane that turn into the face of his long-dead partner, Jock.
Jocko boy.
Is this just gonna be a video full of references to other videos I made this year? Anyway, he talks with the face, but he ends up smashing the window and goes to take his lunch break. May ends up in the same hospital as the doctor and Clara, and it just so happens that the doctor is the only one around to examine her. He checks the burn and notes that it looks like a face, which makes May cry, since it's Grandma Betty again, and the doctor puts that together with the incident with Astrid earlier in the day, and begins to argue with Grandma Betty, who shouts, "The Shroud shall feast!" The doctor has no idea what the Shroud are, and so tries to get the answer out of Grandma Betty, but a doctor who works at the hospital and whose office the doctor has commandeered walks in and the face goes away, leaving only the burn mark. Dr. Ellison starts to examine May's burn, and the doctor makes the face come back, which of course freaks Dr. Ellison out, and the doctor tells her to dress May's wound, in hopes that covering up the face will keep it at bay. They all run out of the office when they hear multiple screams, and split up in true Scooby-Doo fashion. Dr. Ellison and Clara group up, and the doctor and May go off and find the source of the screaming, a pregnant woman, Ruby, who has the face of Tyler, her baby's father, on her dress, who is currently screaming at her. Of course, it's the Shroud again, and the doctor does what he did to the other Shroud, and Ruby starts to go into labor. The doctor is not that kind of doctor, but he can't find anyone else to do it, so he delivers the baby. We are treated to the memory of a young boy named Benji, whose dog is sick, begging his father not to put her down with a shotgun, and then back into the story where Clara and Dr. Ellison found the other source of the screaming. Andrew Ross, one of Dr. Ellison's colleagues, who is being shouted at by the face of his deceased two-timing wife, who was killed in an auto accident on the way to her infidelity. Dr. Ellison explains that the event destroyed him and he had only recently returned to work. They try to explain that it isn't her, and it's an alien being called the Shroud, but he doesn't listen and jumps out the window. The doctor and May deliver a bouncing baby girl, and the doctor uses his knowledge of how to speak baby to tell Ruby that the baby would like its name to be Kilotron 3000, but also suggests Betty. Clara shows back up and tells the doctor that Dr. Ellison was dealing with Andrew, and they go off to see the entire hospital thrown into chaos due to the Shroud. The three of them run to the Tardis and all see different faces in the stain on the front. The doctor seeing Astrid again, Clara seeing a late family friend, and May seeing Grandma Betty. May is of course confused as Clara and the doctor talk about the Tardis, and the doctor figures out that the Shroud are some sort of alien that uses principles similar to the doctor's psychic paper to make their victims feel extreme grief and sorrow by fishing for and bringing sad memories to the surface with mental tentacles. They rush into the Tardis and we get the scene that has become synonymous with Doctor Who, the "it's bigger on the inside" scene. The Doctor finds that the time machine aspect of the TARDIS is broken, and so he decides to just use it to transport themselves to the offices of the Dallas Morning News, but he can't because the TARDIS refuses to move. The Doctor opens a display to see that the Earth has a wormhole around it, connecting Earth to somewhere else, and the TARDIS won't let them take off because of the danger, and so they go to find another mode of transportation. They steal an ambulance and they find the streets filled with crying people under the influence of the Shroud, except for a young boy and an old woman. The young boy's mother is upstairs in the building dealing with the Shroud, who is in the form of her deceased husband. The woman is trying to get the boy to come with her since the streets aren't safe, and she lives in the same building, but he won't budge since he's not supposed to talk to people he doesn't know. Good to see that in the face of disaster, this kid hasn't forgotten about stranger danger. The Doctor uses the Forrest Gump method and has them exchange names so they aren't strangers anymore, and the boy says that he has seen the older woman around in the building, and so he goes with her. They continue on to the Dallas Morning News, and they run into a police blockade, and May tells the doctor that she forgot that they can't go through Dealey Plaza because of the Kennedy assassination, and the doctor puts two and two together, and realizes that the Shroud was waiting for a moment like this, when the entire country, nay, the entire world, would be in mourning. May says that she was looking at those photos of the assassination, and the doctor realizes that since those upset her, it allowed the Shroud to take hold. They get to May's office and examine the original stain, but it's back to being a stain. They hear crying and they go to the editor's office, revealing the editor of the newspaper, Ben Parsons, crying next to the shrouded woman in a pale blue dress. Wow. The Shroud are really on the nose with their name, aren't they? The doctor says that the woman is whoever the person doesn't want to see, like Astrid or Grandma Betty, and he raises the Shroud's veil, and sees that the eyes of the woman are dog's eyes. That's right, the boy from that seemingly random memory is Ben Parsons. The doctor decides to go into his mind and find a way to break Ben free. The doctor confronts Ben's father and tries to explain to Benji that what he's experiencing is a memory, and Ben's father raises his shotgun to the doctor. The doctor uses his sonic to destroy the image, thinking it was the Shroud, but it wasn't, leading the doctor to realize that the Shroud has taken the form of Benji's dog, Tess. The dog tells the doctor that he has no chance and tries to make Benji relive a memory of shooting his dog. The memory begins to fall apart as the doctor tries to make Benji remember he's an adult, and the Shroud tries to counter it, but mistakes part of the memory, showing that the doctor is the good guy and Benji grows up into Ben. The doctor and Ben end up in an attic that represents his mind, and the doctor tries to make Ben remember a happy memory. The doctor and Ben go through other memories as the dog follows, and the doctor makes a funny quip about how he can't erase every gun from Ben's memory since he's an American. The doctor is pulled out by the police, and he implores them to help Ben since removing the doctor from his mind made Ben's heart stop. The doctor tells the police that he didn't kill Ben, and they refuse to let him leave since he's acting pretty crazy. And since the police officers aren't Joe Friday and Bill Gannon, they also aren't listening to reason. The doctor tries to explain the faces, but the cops haven't seen them, which I find hard to believe because the doctor, Clara, and May saw all those people on the streets being attacked by the Shroud on the way to the newspaper building. I mean, did the cops literally just leave the precinct for that call, and none of the beat cops said anything about the people in the streets crying because of disembodied faces? The doctor argues with them, saying that he didn't kill Ben, and realizes that the Shroud was using the Kubler-Ross model on Ben. The Kubler-Ross model is the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And the doctor notes that the longer someone is connected to the Shroud, the more of the model they experience, going from denial all the way to acceptance. They don't believe him because the model won't be published for another 6 years, and they believe that the doctor belongs in an institution. The doctor shouts at the two-way mirror and tells them to send some competent cops in there, and Agent Skeet comes in, kicking the 2 cops out. Skeet, having experienced the Shroud's influence before, believes the doctor and helps get May and Clara out of custody. The entire police station, including those 2 cops who interrogated the doctor, are infected, and the new group of 4 heads back to the hospital, but finds their path blocked by the army. The doctor has Clara, May, and Skeet cause a diversion so that he can sneak into the hospital. The general in charge, a regular army clown named General Harley West, prepares his battle plans from inside the hospital when an Englishman with a mustache comes in, claiming to be from the British Army. His name? Colonel Lethbridge Stewart. And before you all get excited that the 11th Doctor is appearing alongside the Brigadier, he isn't. It's the 11th Doctor dressed up as the Brigadier so that he could get past the soldiers unnoticed. The Doctor almost convinces the General to move all his troops to the barracks when Captain Keating comes in to reveal that the real Lethbridge Stewart is on maneuvers in Salisbury, and so the Doctor is an imposter. Captain Keating holds a gun to the Doctor, ushering him out, but Skeet comes in and holds a gun up to Keating. Clara, May, and Skeet want to sedate Keating so he doesn't try to call for help after they tie him up, but Keating informs them that there are no sedatives left, since Keating used them all up in the General's coffee. Keating knew that West was insane, and so had to stop him from doing something monumentally stupid, and only blew the Doctor's cover because he didn't want the Doctor interfering with his plans. Keating agrees to keep an eye on West as the Tardis team go to do their thing. They take the ambulance and use it to enter the wormhole that is surrounding Earth, ending up inside it, which is odd because usually you just go to the other end instantaneously. The walls of the wormhole are covered with dead bodies that the Doctor says looks like the ones from Pompeii after the volcano, and he would know, because he was there. They dive through the wormhole and they end up on an ice world. Wait a minute. Wormholes you can walk through. Ice world. Is this Doctor Who's version of Sliders? So are the Shroud like the Cro-Mags or something? Anyway, the ambulance gets stuck in a snowdrift and they start to dig it out before some of the locals start to attack the ambulance, which Clara and Skeet are still inside of. And the locals steal the mirror before fighting over it. They begin to go after the Doctor in May, and the Doctor gets ready to go on the offensive when the voice tells him that the people don't want to hurt him, but just want his possessions. The Doctor digs into his pocket and tosses a baseball at him, and he's a little broken up about losing it, but I can't figure out why. It was just signed by some lady named Ruth. They go to the source of the voice and learn that the people who attack them are called Wanters, and that the voice belongs to a clown. Clowns on an ice world. I know I said Doctor Who was weird, but clowns on an ice world. I'm gonna need a minute to let that sink in. Please enjoy these advertisements. Clowns on an ice world. Ha-ha! Hello, aspiring mad scientists of the multiverse and beyond. I am Professor Mike Sano. I used to be a mad scientist, but have since reformed my ways, and I am now working as a mostly legitimate scientist. But I know that there are a lot of people out there that want to become mad scientists, but are stuck because they don't know how to. A couple of years ago, I was incarcerated in a prison for my crimes against the multiverse, and I produced a 7.5-part series on how to become a mad scientist as part of my required community service. However, most of those tapes have been lost to time. I want to start that series up again from scratch with a 10-episode miniseries detailing the basics of mad scientist. But I can't do it alone. You see, I lack the proper funding to get the project off the ground. But I have a benefactor who is willing to spot me the money on one condition. If you, viewers and fans, can get the BlackScarabFilmZ Patreon to $20 a month, I can produce and share this series with you. There are perks for pledging to the Patreon, including seeing new videos a day earlier than anyone else. So if you like reviews and you want to see my videos, become a patron. This series will, of course, feature me teaching you what you need to know to become a mad scientist, like dealing with a nemesis, or choosing the evil Lair that's right for you. Plus, one of the 10 episodes will feature my origin story. So become a patron today. Back to you, Mike. Thanks, Mike Sano. Anyway, yeah, clowns. Their names are Flip-Flop and Wobblebottom. Clara and Skeet go looking for the Doctor, but get attacked by a bear, which they escape from before the bear breaks the window of the ambulance. The Doctor fills the clowns in on what their deal is, and the clowns explain that their planet, Semptis, was attacked by the Shroud and all the grief was removed, which you would think was a good thing. Except that the way that the human brain works requires something to fill that gap left by the grief, and so it is filled by another emotion, which is why the Wanters need possessions. It's the only way to keep them sane. But there are others, like Ragers, where anger fills the gap, or Tremblers, where fear fills the gap. But the reason that there are clowns on an ice world is that through their clowning, they can rehabilitate the people, and through regular therapy, restore them back to normal. But since the people who lack emotion outnumber the clowns, it's a slow process. The Doctor, of course, is amazed at the resiliency of the human race and wants to see the restoration in action, but that requires grabbing a Wanter from that group that attacked them. Meanwhile, Clara wakes up in a cave hanging from the ceiling and uses the Force to grab her lightsaber to kill the Wampa. Wait, wrong sci-fi ice world. Anyway, Harry, Kim, and Chakotay find the Doctor's mobile emitter. Clara wakes up after the bear attack and goes to find Skeet, but collapses next to him before a pair of squeaky shoes come into her vision and knocks her out with gas. The Doctor is having a grand old time as he Pied Pipers the Wanters using his recorder, and they snatch themselves a Wanter using knockout gas, presumably the same gas that knocked out Clara. In fact, it's the exact same gas, because when the clowns bring the Doctor and May to their camp, they show him the various emotionally damaged people, and in one of the rooms is Clara Oswald. While Clara recovers from the gas, they watch the clown's restoration procedure, which is basically a clown show. They work toward making the Wanter laugh and then repeat the procedure for a week or so until they're fixed. The Doctor realizes that this might work as a preventative measure on Earth, and so he enlists the help of a few clowns and borrows a clown car to make the voyage through the wormhole. Oh, and clown cars use the same properties as the Tardis to make it bigger on the inside. Who knew? They get back to the hospital and see that everyone has gotten to the bargaining stage of the Kubler-Ross model, and the doctor realizes that there haven't been many kids affected, due to most adults having experienced more traumatic grief, and so he sends the clown car through the city to collect kids. Man, that would sound really creepy out of context. The doctor borrows a radio and uses it to contact Keating to check on the napping general and get permission to use all his vehicles. Then he goes and creates a device to amplify positive emotions so that the clowns can reach more people at one time, and sends them off to do their show in front of various news vans, since news crews see a lot of grief and so are more resilient to the effects of the Shroud. They succeed to an extent and realize that the Shroud have started to feed faster and speed up the stages of grief, which leads the Doctor to realize that the Shroud are in a race, but one single creature in the form of a living wormhole, the same one that they traveled through. Twice. The Doctor goes to fight the Shroud head-on and starts to amplify his own memories, flashing through sad moments of his life, like leaving Susan on Earth in 2150 and saying goodbye to Jamie and Zoe when the Time Lords catch him, leaving Jo with her fiancé, dropping Sarah Jane off when he's recalled to Gallifrey, Adric's death, Perry's mind swap with Kiv, Mel's departure, leaving Grace on Earth on New Year's Eve 1999, leaving Jack during the battle with the Daleks, Astrid's death, and finally Amy and Roy getting attacked by the Angels and sent back in time. Then we get to see a memory that wasn't from the show. Every incarnation of the Doctor attending the funeral of who may be the Doctor's greatest human ally, Brigadier Alistair Gordon Lethbridge Stewart. The Doctor falls backwards into the Tardis and Skeet hits the fast return switch, which brings the TARDIS back to the planet that it was on when the book started, detaching the Shroud from Earth. The clowns frantically fight actual tentacles, like something out of a monster movie, as Flip-Flop is dragged away by the Shroud and the Doctor starts to trap the Shroud in a loop on that planet, where the only thing to feed on is water full of avocado, which has antidepressant qualities. The Doctor gets the Shroud in the loop and brings everyone back to Semptis, minus the Shroud. They drop the clowns off and begin to leave, but Skeet decides to stay behind with a clown woman he met to help restore the Shroud-attacked people of Semptis. General West wakes up and Keating and Dr. Ellison tell him that he saved the day, but lost his memory of it and try to convince him to retire, since he was a pretty crazy general, like General Bartford Hamilton Steele from MASH.
On comms, the backbone of the service. Where are you from, son?
Iowa, sir.
No talking in rank!
Hey, cool, I made 2 Harry Morgan references in one video. They bring May to see her dying grandmother prior to her death, and also cause the problem that stopped her from seeing her in the first place. The novel ends with a short vignette of the Shroud beginning another attack on the planet with another presidential assassination. And that was Doctor Who, Shroud of Sorrow. Was it good? Yeah. This is one of those books that you can totally see as an episode of the show. I especially enjoyed the flashback scene and the scene with the Brigadier's funeral, since those were good points of grief from the show, showing how much the Doctor cares for his various companions. Overall, I liked the book, and it's a book that was really good. The Shroud are a really creepy antagonist, and I'd hate for something to start feeding off my negative memories. I'll concede that the memory part did remind me a lot of that scene from The Rings of Akaten, where the Doctor gave a speech about what he's seen, and the one from Mind Heist where the teller fed on the Doctor's memories. But they were only similar in that regard, and that's something I'm not going to hold against the book. I highly recommend this book to anyone who wants more Matt Smith as the Doctor, because the characters from the show are written extremely well in this, and I can actually hear their voices when I read the dialogue. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more of the Literary Lair, you can hit that subscribe button. And if you have any comments or complaints about the video, you can put those in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this video, show it to your friends and share it around the internet. And maybe consider supporting the show on Patreon. See you next time. The Doctor shouts at the two-way mirror and tells them to send some competent comps... competent comps?